Hello, this is Curlinda with Curlinda Can Cook, and today we're going to be making pan-seared pork chops with apples and onions. All right, guys, let's get ready. Let's get set. Let's get cooking. What we have here is an apple that we're going to go ahead and cut in half here. We're going to be using apples. These are Red Delicious apples that we're going to be using today. We're going to go ahead and de-seed our apple by removing the seed from the center and any stems and anything at the bottom. Now, if you have a apple corer or an apple slicer, you can feel free to use those devices. I just prefer to do it this way. What I'm going to do here is thinly slice my apples so that they're pretty much all the same thickness. And we're going to slice 2 apples. Now, for my family, I'm feeding a family of 4, and 2 apples is a plenty for us. Now, the apples that I'm using here are Red Delicious apples. If you like an apple that's a little more tart, then you can also use a Granny Smith apple or whatever apples you have in season. Red Delicious are actually my favorite apples, so those are the apples that I decide to use in this dish. Now, you can mix your apples and use some sweet, some tart. So, if you want to mix these with Granny Smith, you can do that as well. So we're going to go ahead and get these all cut up here. Again, you want to make sure they're about all the same thickness so that you are allowing them a chance to cook evenly in your pot. Now I'm going ahead, or in your pan I should say. Now I'm going ahead and just turning this to the other side, and I'm going to repeat the same thing. I just realized I didn't get a plate, so give me a second here to grab a plate so that I can place the apples on once I get them all cut. So here we go, guys. We got our apples here all sliced up, and you can take your hand and just kind of, work them apart. And we're going to go ahead and repeat the same thing on our next apple. Go ahead and remove the seeds from the center. Take the stem off of the apple and take the bottom off. Now, we have gone ahead and washed our apples. You want to make sure that you wash your fruits and vegetables before you use them, because you don't know what they were used out in the field or anything that they use to get them in the store. And again, we're going to go ahead and slice them and do the same thing that we did the first time. Slice, 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 so that we can get that all taken care of. Okay? All right, we're going to get these sliced down. Now, I would love to know what type of apples you decide to use. If you decide to try your hand at this dish, I would love the apples that you use. So go ahead and leave those down in the comments below. Also, if you are new to my channel and you have not done so already and you're still here, first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I upload new videos to my channel. And again, we're going to repeat the same thing with this that we did with the other apples. Remove the center, remove the bottom, any stems, and we're going to slice it. Now, for those of you who have been to my channel before, thank you so much for coming back. I really do appreciate all of your love and your support. Now, let's go ahead and get this and put this in the trash so that we can stay clean as we go. And we're going to go ahead and slice these down as well. And again, when you're slicing your apples, you want to make sure that you keep everything pretty much even, so that it can all cook pretty much at the same time to have the same doneness, because you don't want skips and dips in your food. As well as, I think that food is foundational, so when you have a nice solid foundation for your food, you are going to have a nice finish to your food as well. So consistency is everything. Now let's go ahead, now that we've gotten our apples cut up, let's give our cutting board a good wipe down so that we can get ready to slice our onion. Now that we've wiped down our cutting board, we have our onion. What we're going to do is just go ahead and take the top and the bottom of our onion and cut that off. For this recipe, guys, what I am using here is a Vidalia onion. Hey, family up there in Georgia, how y'all doing? So, yes, this is a Vidalia onion, and we're just going to take the outside peel off of the onion and pretty much slice it just like we did our apples. So, let's just go ahead first and slice our onion in half, and then we're going to remove the rest of the peel from both sides. And like I said, we're going to pretty much follow the same process that we did with our apples. So we're going to go ahead and take that peel off and go ahead and put that in the trash and get ready to slice. Now, when you slice your onions, you want to pretty much slice them pretty much the same thickness as you did with your apples, because you want everything to be able to harmonize in your finished dish. Okay? And I would love to know what onions you decide to use as well in your dish. Tell me what you decided to do as far as your onions. Now here, like I said, I am using the sweet Vidalia onion. But if you have a red onion, if you have a yellow onion, if you have a white onion, whatever onion you decide to use, you can use that. Now we're going to set that to the side and go ahead and repeat the same thing with this onion. Oh, did you see that knife tried to cut me? Mm-mm-mm. All right, so we're going to go ahead and slice these the same as we did our other onions, so that we can get them prepared to go in our pan. And once we finish these onions, all we could do is take these onions and put them in the same bowl, honey, that we did with them apples, because ain't nobody got time to be washing all them dishes now. Don't be messing up all them dishes for them children to be washing them, because you know what? You should be cleaning as you go anyway, and ain't nobody got time to be messing up all them dishes and washing them. So yeah, like I said, what we're gonna do is take these apples and we're gonna put these apples in the same bowl. I'm sorry, these onions. We're gonna put these onions in the same bowl as our apples, so that we can get ready to move on to the next step. All right, now that we got that pretty much done, let's go ahead once again, wipe off our cutting board and get ready to cut up our garlic. All right, guys, so here we go. Here's our garlic for our mashed potatoes. That's our little brown spot, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. Now, I am using fresh garlic, but you can use the minced garlic in the, you could use the minced garlic out of the jar if you want to. I personally just prefer fresh garlic when I am making my mashed potatoes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit so that we can get on with the process. All right, now that we got our garlic all chopped up as fine as we could, we're gonna go ahead and place that in our bowl, and we are going to set that aside along with our apples and our onions, so that again we are going to be putting this later inside of our mashed potatoes. So now that we got that done, let's just give our cutting board one more good wipe down and get ready to cut up our white potatoes for our mashed potatoes. All right, now that we've wiped off our board, we're going to go ahead and take our potatoes. We're going to cut it in half, and then we're going to slice it in about 3 to 4 slices to get everything ready for our mashed potatoes. And again, I'm going to just go ahead and speed this up a little bit so that we can get on with the process. And now with this, you do not have to leave the peel on your potato. Just for the dish that I am making, I was mindful to leave my potato peels on because I want that additional texture inside my mashed potatoes. But this part is totally, totally optional. All right, so now that we are down to our last potato, we're going to go ahead and take this one. And again, we're going to cut it in about 3 to 4 pieces and put it inside of our bowl of water that we have in the sink. All right, guys, so now we are ready to start preparing our meat. And with us preparing our meat, we're going to go ahead and season our pork chops. We have here 6 pork chops. We're going to put a little bit of allspice on it. Um, and then we're going to add our salt. Now, this is one of those cook to taste type meals. You don't want it bland, and I don't like the freshness of my meat, so I do add a good amount of salt because I don't like to taste the freshness of pork chop. Here we are adding some sage to our pork chops, and then we are going to finish it off by adding a little bit of black pepper. And once we get our meat good and seasoned, we're going to take our meat and we are going to turn it over, and we are going to repeat the same process that we just did on the other side. You want to make sure that your meat is seasoned pretty good so that you don't have bland meat. You can also season your meat ahead of time so that, while you're at work or whatever. Let me wipe my hand off really quick. All right. So now let's get this going. Again, we're adding sage. But like I was saying, you know what? This sage is on my nerve right now. Let me go ahead and take the top off and go ahead and let it do what it do, okay? But as I was saying, you can go ahead and season your meat ahead of time if you have to go to work or whatnot. Put it in the refrigerator and let it marinate for you for a couple hours. Just if you do that, take it out about 10 or 15 minutes ahead of time before you get ready to cook it so that it can chill a little bit before you put it in the pan. Here we're coming back again with the allspice just to give it a nice, coating of the allspice. Not too much to overdo it, but just a nice generous amount. And then we're gonna repeat the same thing as the other side. We're gonna add some salt to it, and then once again we're gonna finish it off with our black pepper. Now, if you go ahead and season your meat for it to marinate ahead of time, make sure you cover it when you put it in the refrigerator so that the top of your meat doesn't dry out on you. All right, guys, so now that we got that all done, let's get ready to head to the stove. All right, see you on the flip side. All right, guys, we're at the stove. We have our potatoes here cooking in our pot. They are boiling, getting ready for our mashed potatoes. We have our pan here that we are going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in so that we can get ready to sear our meat in the pan. So here, this pan also has been heating. This is a 12-inch pan, by the way, for those of you who may want to know what size pan I'm using. It's 12 inches. So again, our pan has already been heating. Our oil is pretty hot. Now we're just going to add our pork chops in. And these pork chops that I'm frying right here, these are thinly sliced pork chops. If you use the thicker cut of the pork chops, for these I'm going to let them fry for like 3 to 5 minutes on each side and then turn them. If you are using the thicker cuts of the pork chops, just go ahead and let them cook a little bit longer to make sure that they are good and done in the middle. But you do not want to overcook them because you don't want them tough. Now, I know you saw me season 6 piece, but I'm only going to use 4 because I'm going to save them other 2 for my husband for his lunch tomorrow. So here we're just going to let our meat sear down a little bit in the olive oil and let that go and do its own little thing while we move on to the next thing. Now, for those of you who know that olive oil has a tendency to pop, go ahead and wipe down your stove because you want to make sure that you get the grease off of your stove. And if you are new to cooking, go ahead and wipe down your stove because I'm sure your olive oil kind of popped up when you put your meat in your pan. So you're going to just go ahead and let that cook and do its thing. Also, what else? The other thing that you see on my stove here, this is our broth that we are going to be using as our main liquid that we are going to be placing in our pork chops once they get done with our apples and our onions. So you'll see we're going to do that in a little bit. Now, this broth I made myself, and this is 2 tablespoons of the chicken bouillon, the powdered kind of chicken bouillon, and 2 cups of water. You can use the Swanson broth that you buy out of Walmart or, Publix, Kroger, whatever store you have. You can use that as well. Now what we're doing is we're giving our potatoes a stir, and we are checking them to see how soft they are, to see if they are ready for us to take them out of the pan, to be able to pour the water off so that we can move on to the next step with them. So we're gonna let them cook for another about a good minute or two before we get ready to start our next process with our potatoes for our mashed potatoes. All right, guys. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna let everything cook and do its thing here for a second. Um, I turn my pan up here to a medium high heat so that it can go ahead and do what it has to do with our pork chops. With the broth, I have that on a medium because I just want that at a rolling simmer. All right, y'all. So let's let that do what it do, and let's move on to the next thing, honey. All right, so now it's been about a good 5 minutes, so we could go ahead and turn our pork chops over. Don't they look good? They smell good. I wish we had smell-o-vision over here, y'all. It smells so, so good. So what we're doing is we're just turning our pork chops, and we're going to follow the same process as the first time. We are going to allow them to cook down in the olive oil for about 3 to 5 minutes. And again, I did turn my stove up to a medium-high heat, so we're going to let that do what it do right over there. All right. All right, guys, I'm back, and what I've done is, you notice I moved the broth. I did want to bring the potatoes more in view for you so that you can see what I do when I make the mashed potatoes. And the broth, again, it is on a rolling simmer. We did start out with 2 cups of liquid. We want to end up with at least a cup and a half. What we're doing now is we're going to go ahead and take these pork chops out of the pan because they are done. They've been cooked on both sides for like 3 to 5 minutes. They are pretty much done. Now, you don't want to pull the oil out of the pan because we're about to use that in a second. But first, I want you to take a look at these pork chops, honey. Look at it. Aren't those gorgeous? Ooh, 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 I can't wait to eat them. All right, so now back to our pan. What we're going to do now is we're going to take the apples and the rosemary and the onions, and we're just going to pour 'em right in that olive oil and the drippings from the pork chop because that seasoning from the pork chop season our olive oil. So we're going to give this a quick stir, and we are going to just let this start to cook down and get tender for us so that we can finish off this dish. Now with our apples, we could go ahead. If your apples are doing this, just take your hands and break them apart so that we can get these all, ready to be evenly cooked and tenderized. And again, we have about 4 sprigs of rosemary in here just to add a nice seasoning to this dish. Now, I will tell you this. These apples are still cool because you saw me just put them in this pan. But now, if they were not pulled apart and I noticed this sometime later, yeah, I'm going to use a fork or a spoon. Okay? So let's just get this going and we'll be right back. All right, guys, so now we are getting ready to prepare our mashed potatoes. Again, I just want to say we did not peel these potatoes. If you do not like peel in your potatoes, peel your potatoes. This is how I'm doing it for my dish. So what I'm using here is I'm using a cup of butter or 2 sticks of butter. Now this butter here is room temperature butter. So with me using this butter, I'm going to allow this to sit on top of my potatoes so that it can melt down some under the bottom. Now the eye that I have these potatoes sitting on, it is turned off because I don't want my potatoes to keep cooking. They are plenty hot. And while they're doing that thing, I'm going to go ahead and give the apples and onions another quick stir so that I can turn them and everything can really be cooking evenly here. So we're going to get these just turned in our pan along with our rosemary. And this smells so scrumptious. Okay. All right, and what we're going to do now is we're going to get ready to go ahead and add our milk to our potatoes. This is a half a cup of 2% milk. You can use buttermilk or whatever type of milk that you prefer. Here I'm using just regular 2% milk, and this part is totally optional, but I am adding 2 tablespoons of sour cream into my mashed potatoes. Now, at this point, if you want to add chives, you can. If you want to add, parsley or whatever, you can. As you see, I just add a little bit of salt. We're going to add our salt to taste. I'm going to crack some more black pepper in here. We're going to add our black pepper to taste as well. If you want to add like some Parmesan cheese or whatever into your mashed potatoes, you could do so. However you want to flavor your mashed potatoes. I would love to know how creative you come up with. Here I am using my potato masher to mash my potatoes. Now y'all new millennials might not know nothing about a potato masher, so go ahead, y'all, and use your mixer. But I prefer it do it this way. This the way grandma did it, mama and them did it, so this the way I'm gonna keep doing it, okay? Yes, I do know I could use my mixer, but it's just something about doing it by hand. That's how I like to do it. So yeah, if you want chunks in your mashed potatoes, if you like chunky mashed potato where you could taste a little more potatoes and it's not as smooth, then you could pretty much stop here and just mix and be done, because this does at this point have some potato chunks in it. But I want mine a little more smoother, so I'm going to keep mashing at this point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in that garlic that we chopped up a little bit earlier. I'm going to go ahead and add that garlic in here too. Now also, one thing I want y'all to know: when you add your garlic, the more your mashed potatoes sit with your garlic, the more intense the garlic flavor becomes. Okay. And so now, while we're letting that sit there really quick, let's just give this another stir with our apples and our onion mixture. And so, yeah, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and whip these potatoes up really, really quick. And we will get that show on the road with them. All right, now, so you can see me whipping these potatoes up. I've moved from my potato masher to actually my spatula here. Now, if you don't have a spatula, you can use a spoon or whatever you have. And what you want to do is get your spoon and you want to taste your potatoes, honey. Again, we added salt and pepper to taste. You want to see what everything is. Now, it should be pretty where you want it at this point, because of all that butter and stuff that we add. And I did add butter with salt in it, so that's why I didn't put a whole lot of salt when I put the salt in it, because my butter had salt in it, okay? And I must make this disclaimer for this mashed potatoes: if you're trying to watch your weight, honey, these are not the mashed potatoes for you, okay? Um, that part. So yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix these up a little bit, and then we are going to place the lid on them. And again, the eye that this is on is actually off. Now, as you know, I had that broth over here, so it is warm, so it's doing what I need it to do. But other than that, it is not on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lid on these potatoes and let them sit here for a second, because I don't want to continue cooking, but I do want them to stay hot. So I'm going to go ahead and add my lid to it, and then I'm going to let it do its thing, and I'm going to move it over to my back eye, so that eventually I will turn it back on low. But in the meantime, let's get back to these apples and onions. All right, guys, so now that we're back, we're going to go ahead and give our apples and onions another stir. And, God, I cannot tell y'all how good this smells. This smells so, so good. But we're going to give these apples and onions another good stir. As you all can see, the color has changed on them. They are getting really tender. That's my little Genesis back there, y'all. Hey, Jen Jen. But with our pork chops, if you notice, I told you we had to keep the pork chops warm. So I've taken the pork chops and just put them on a plate and sat them on top of the broth. It is still simmering, but I just sat the pork chops on the plate on top of that broth so that that plate can stay warm and keep our pork chops warm. Okay, because we don't want them to cool down too much. Also, another thing, this plate is going to get hot. If you are new to cooking, please get you some mittens. Now, I know you are going to see me move this plate with my bare hands. I am used to cooking. I've been cooking since God only knows when. So I am used to this. But if you are new to cooking or you can't stand heat, go ahead and get you some mittens to move that plate. In the meantime, back to these apples and onions though. What I'm about to do here is, if you can see, I just made a little hole in the center of my apples and onions. I'm going to get me some brown sugar, and I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar into the center of these apples and onions, honey. This is my personal preference, just like with the sour cream and the mashed potatoes. This is totally optional. But what we're going to do is give this a good stir. This is going to help thicken our sauce once we add our broth in here. And also, the brown sugar is going to enhance the natural sugars and the natural sweetness of your apples. Now, if you do not have brown sugar, do not add white sugar because you don't want this dish sweet. This is just an enhancer to the apples and the onions, and it also helps with the caramelization process later. So again, we're going to go ahead and give this a stir in our brown sugar. And with us stirring in our brown sugar, you already had that oil in your pan. That is plenty enough oil for it to do what it needed to do. Okay, so now that we are getting this out the way, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get ready to move our pork chops from the top of our broth. And we are going to turn that eye on low for our mashed potatoes, so that our mashed potatoes, they can stay warm. We don't want them to continue cooking. They're already done, so you don't want them to scorch, but you do want them to stay warm. Don't forget to turn your eye off where your broth is cooking, because you don't want that eye to stay on your stove. Now let's move these pork chops over here. Move them out of the way. And again, we had this broth on medium on a rolling simmer, and we're going to go ahead and add it into our apple and onion mixture. And as you can see, when we add it in, it's making that go ahead and start to boil. Now, it's very important that you add this hot, because you don't want to shock your pot and then have to kind of start all over. So go ahead and add it hot, and then you can keep things moving. Now you want to kind of spread everything out evenly at this point into your mixture, so that it can kind of do its little thing here for a second. Just let it do what it do. Let it cook for like a minute or two, so all of your flavors and everything can marry together. Your apples, your onions, your rosemary, your broth. And you also want to taste it. Again, stir, taste, repeat. You don't want to get nobody no bland food now. So you want to taste it to make sure where it is. I made my own broth, so this is plenty enough salt in here for me. Now, again, you can use the Walmart brand, the Swanson, whatever you decide to use. You can use that as a broth. If you're a person who have to have low sodium, use your low sodium broth. And we're going to go ahead now and add our pork chops into our pan with our apples and everything. Again, this is on a medium-high heat. We are going to allow this to reduce by about half. So we're going to let that liquid do its thing. I don't know why I'm trying to use this spoon for these pork chops. Let me just go ahead and get this fork over here and let it have its own way. See, oh Lord, life is so much better now. So again, what we're doing is we're just adding our pork chops right onto the top of our apples and our onions, so that we can let that simmer down. And we're not going to put a lid on this. But what we are going to do is we're going to take our spoon and we're going to add some of the liquid out of our pot. We're going to pour that liquid, well, not pour, but we're going to spoon the liquid on top of our pork chops so that we can have our pork chops and everything hydrated and that they're not drying out on us. And again, this is a medium high heat. We're going to let this continue to cook down for a few more minutes. And yeah, y'all, we are almost done. So we're going to let this cook down for about another good 5 minutes or so until we reduce our liquid by about half. All right. Y'all, this smells so good. I know I've said this a couple times, but it smells so, so good. If you have not already done so, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell so that you can be notified whenever we upload new videos. So again, let this cook down and we're going to move on to our next step. Here we go, guys. Now we have reduced it by half. As you can see, it's gotten thicker. And along the way, what we've been doing is we've been continually putting the liquid on our pork chops like you see me doing here. So we are once again going to do that. And we are about to get ready to plate up and eat up, honey. Again, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video and this recipe with a friend. I would love to see your pictures on my Facebook page and on my Instagram page at Curlinda Can Cook. So go ahead, show me what you got. And you are about done, honey. You just made your very own homemade mashed potatoes with pork chops with onions and apples. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, once again, like,